Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the third and final part of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Hey brother, I am a 178-pound male with a 430 squat, 260 pause bench, and 485 conventional deadlift, with the goal of putting on as much size and strength as possible, and wondering if I should run your off-season strength program or use block-style training using Dr. Mike's recommendations. I've read of his book several times and have a solid understanding of block programming, but don't want to complicate things if more gains can be made on a proven program such as yours. Thanks. I find your question a little confusing because my intermediate program is a block style program. That's what it is. It's linear block periodization. You know what? I'm going to say personal preference. You can run my program. My program that I have there is nothing special. You need to understand my linear off-season program is nothing more than textbook linear block periodization. That's really all it is. It's not a special or complicated program, but it works. It's simple, proven system, and it works. You could do that. You could take Dr. Mike's advice, or you could even run something similar to what I'm running right now. I've broken down recently my overall training progression in the last month. As far as my own concurrent style training, you know what? You could do any of those. You could do any of those and reach your goals as long as you're consistent and you use proven methods. It really isn't that big of a deal. Why don't you look at the one that you think you're going to be most consistent with and you're going to be able to follow through with based upon your own experiences? Because if you're a strong enough lifter now, you know your body, you know your mentality at this point. Why don't you look at those programs and say, hey, this is the one that I think I could handle the best. This is what's going to work best for my mentality and mindset and my preference, and follow it through for at least 12 weeks and see how you do. That's what I would recommend, and keep moving forward. And if you want to get a lot stronger though from where you're at, you are probably going to have to gain some weight. So just be prepared to put down the carbs. Start knocking them down. All right, next question. Hi Jason. I switched up my bench technique to incorporate your style, meaning turning my hands inward so the elbows are pointed out but tuck in as I go. I noticed that my 5 rep max seems to have gone down 10%, but I feel it a lot more in my chest. Is this normal? I feel like I may have been shrugging using more upper back and shoulders, using a more traditional grip. What do you mean a more traditional grip? My grip that I teach is the traditional grip. I'm not sure where you're getting that from. I teach the traditional grip on the bench press with the hand position. But that's okay. Here's what you've got to look at with this. You're probably feeling it a little more in your chest because your chest has been underdeveloped from something with the way you've been benching. Very much a possibility. Number two, as far as the weight going down, yeah, you totally changed your technique on a major exercise that you have ingrained motor patterns on. You don't have the neuromuscular efficiency in the motor pattern learned. So that would be almost like if you played the guitar and you used a certain style of guitar playing and you totally switch to a different hand position or something, the way you do it, it's going to take you a little while to get your skill back, right? Because your hands and everything's moving differently, and you've ingrained motor patterns with something different over a long period of time. So obviously it's going to take time to relearn it, and until then your performance is going to be weaker. You need to understand that strength has multiple components to it on an exercise. There is a neural efficiency and a motor unit learning involved in every exercise, not just brute strength through muscle size. Now granted, the strength through muscle size contributes the most, but the other stuff matters, meaning that's why you only went down 10% and start going back to where you started your first day in the weight room. Meaning maybe you were doing 250 and you dropped down to 225 instead of dropping down to the 50 pounds you started with however many years ago, because you've accumulated that muscle mass on the lifts. But now you have to learn the new movement patterns a bit, and it's just going to take a little time, but you'll get there. All right, next question. Do you really need anything other than weighted chins and deadlifts to develop a good back? Let's say you get up to a 135-pound chin and a 500-plus pound deadlift. Anything that would lack? No, not really. Not really. I mean, we could argue that rows and other stuff could help with the erectors and traps and all of that, arguably. Some cleans or high pulls and stuff could again help with the upper back and shoulder girdle more. But, ultimately, as far as your overall back development, is anything going to lack if you build that sort of strength base? No, probably not. You're probably going to have a pretty impressive back. So the other thing becomes of, do you need anything else? No. No, you're going to have a big, thick, well-developed back if you get both of those numbers reached. Absolutely. Other things can still be helpful overall. And what you need to remember, other things, other exercises, and like I said, gave you a couple examples. Your pin leg rows, power cleans, high pulls, could help bring up any weak links. It will help you get those other numbers up, because that's the other thing too. Not everybody can get their way to a 500 plus pound deadlift and 135 pound weighted chins purely by doing weighted chins and deadlifts. Now, it'll get you most of the way there, but having a little bit of extra accessory work that can work on some of those other areas isn't a bad thing. They're not necessary, but they may in some cases help get you there a little bit faster and help bring up those weak points. But back to the other point, no, you could build a very impressive back off that, no doubt. All right, next question. Hey Jason, just looking for some clarity around overtraining. If a person exceeds their maximum recoverable volume, would that have a substantial effect on muscle gains? I know it can definitely affect connective tissue, but I wasn't sure if it actually affected muscle gains and to what extent. Thanks, amigo. Keep up the good work. If you exceed your maximum recoverable volume, you will not only gain less muscle from that workout, you may gain zero muscle from that workout. That's why there are volume caps, and why really, really high volume training, we always say, look, that only works for guys on drugs. And the reason for that is that if you exceed your maximum recoverable volume to the point to where you aren't mostly recovered before the muscle growth window stops, you probably won't gain any muscle from it. In other words, if it takes you 48 hours or longer to recover from a workout, the amount of muscle you gain from that workout is going to be negligible, because you don't grow more than about 30 to 48 hours after a workout. So if you're exceeding your maximum recoverable volume so much that the recovery end of it takes so long that it exceeds the restructuring side of the recovery, you're not going to gain anything. So that's the problem. Maximum recoverable volume in drug-free lifters tends to produce less muscle growth. So that's kind of the point we make when we talk about workload. Workload stimulates more growth. Always. More workload always stimulates more growth. The question becomes, do you have enough time during your muscle protein synthesis uptime to completely restructure the tissue based around that growth? Or is it taking you so long to recover from it that you're missing most of the growth window? That's the real question. So yeah, exceeding your maximum recoverable volume regularly is a very, very good way to stop making gains completely. It's a good way to stop making gains. So yeah, it is a big deal and it is important. All right, next question. I expect it has been covered before, but it's always relevant. What are DOMs an indication of other than a muscle being targeted correctly? DOMs aren't an indication that a muscle's been targeted correctly at all. You can have severe DOMs without having enough stimulation in a muscle to cause new growth. What? I'm going to say that again. Depending upon your training style and training of frequency, it is possible to induce severe DOMs in a muscle without actually achieving your maximum or your minimum effective volume, or to even stimulate new adaptation. Right? It's totally possible. Furthermore, you can stimulate maximum growth in many cases while experiencing no DOMs. You might occasionally get DOMs. It's going to happen randomly, but it's possible to spend an entire year making maximum gains and get 0 or only 1 or 2 cases of DOMs throughout the year. It's totally possible. It all depends on training style. The only thing that DOMs is an indication of is that you have hit a muscle with a lot more volume than you normally do. And remember, a lot more volume isn't required for growth. You only need a small increase in volume to stimulate new growth, usually, over what you've done before. It's an increase of a large amount of volume you're not used to. It's an indication that your training frequency could be too low for that muscle because you're not getting the repeat bout effect to stop the DOMs. Or number 3, it's a sign that you did a lot of excessive eccentric loading. You need to remember, eccentric loading is a useful tool for hypertrophy and size, but it isn't a requirement for maximum hypertrophy or size. It's just one of the tools in the toolbox. So if anything, while there can be some correlation between DOMs and growth, what you need to understand, it is absolutely possible to structure your workouts for maximum growth without DOMs or while minimizing it. And it's possible to cause excessive amounts of DOMs while stimulating zero muscle growth. Again, it doesn't even mean that you targeted the muscle correctly. That's not really what it means at all. It means one of those other three things that I mentioned. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.